You know, we look at electoral maps all the time, and it is so easy to just see a vast sea of red punctuated by these isolated islands of blue. But have you ever stopped to wonder why American cities and the countryside vote like they belong to entirely different countries? Today, we are going way beyond the simplistic red versus blue narrative. We're going to dive into the data to unpack the identity, the values, and the real historical shifts that have completely redrawn our political world.
Seriously, why do urban and rural areas vote so differently? We often think of this divide as just a permanent, fixed law of nature in American politics, right? Like it's just always been this way. But looking past those basic maps reveals a surprisingly recent phenomenon. Actually, this massive geographical divergence happened mostly within a single generation. Understanding how and why we got here is absolutely vital.
So to unpack this, we're going to peel the onion layer by layer. We'll look at 1, redrawing the political map, 2, the values divide, 3, the 1960s historical shift, 4, the 1990s breaking point, and 5, what keeps us apart today.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, redrawing the political map.
Get this. As recently as the year 2000, Republicans actually governed half of the largest cities in America. That was the tail end of a very, very different era. But today, they lead only 2 out of the top 30, with Democrats holding 27. The shift in urban political leadership has been nearly absolute. The political minority has just largely vanished from urban leadership. And it's definitely not just local mayors. When we zoom out to presidential elections, the voting gap between urban and rural voters exploded to a massive 33% by 2020. And that gap, it's continuing to widen. We are literally watching a fundamental restructuring of political geography that is tearing our demographic charts right down the middle. But here's the kicker. The timeline reveals something completely shocking. This divide is entirely unprecedented. If you rewind to the late 1800s, rural farmers and miners were actually the left-wing radicals driving populist movements to fight banks and railroads. In the 1940s and 50s, urban and rural areas actually voted largely in tandem. It wasn't until the 1990s that the lines separated completely. It's a great reminder that political geography can and absolutely does shift over time.
Okay, let's move on to section 2, the values divide.
So what's really driving this beneath the surface? Well, dense cities structurally demand collective governmental solutions, whereas rural areas rely much more on individual solutions and generations of deep roots. Political scientists actually call the urban drivers the 3 Ds: density, diversity, and degrees. Think about it. When millions of people share the same subway and one broken water main affects thousands, government feels pretty essential. Plus, cities naturally draw people who score high on the psychological trait of openness. On the flip side, rural values are rooted in rugged individualism, long generational ties to the exact same plot of land, and a strong reliance on community faith and local churches to make sense of the world.
Because of these completely different day-to-day realities, if you're a rural landowner out there fixing your own fences and managing your own property, government regulations can feel a lot less like help and way more like a massive intrusion. It's a sentiment perfectly captured by Ronald Reagan, who joked that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." What sounds like a vital public service in a dense, loud city often sounds like an outsider dictating rules from 100 miles away in the country.
Furthermore, we really have to impartially recognize that rural America faces genuine material grievances that leave them feeling completely ignored by a centralized political system. We're not just talking about cultural differences here. We are talking about devastating hospital closures, forced school consolidations, massive broadband deserts, and infrastructure that has simply been left to decay for decades. These are tangible, daily problems affecting real people.
Which brings us to section 3, the 1960s historical shift.
Now, the groundwork for this massive shift was actually laid decades earlier by an incredible demographic event, the Great Migration. Between the 1920s and the 1960s, millions of Black Americans left the rural South. Fleeing oppressive Jim Crow laws and agricultural devastation, they moved into northern cities for industrial jobs. This built a massive, highly influential urban voting bloc that fundamentally changed the political calculus of the entire country.
That massive demographic shift basically set the stage for a total political realignment. When the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed, unraveling the legal architecture of segregation, urban Democratic support absolutely shut up.
But it prompted many white rural Southerners to break from the party. To them, it was seen not just as policy, but as the federal government forcing massive social change onto their local communities. This initiated a slow bleed through the ensuing decades, firmly linking one side with urban voters, while rural voters began a generation-long shift away.
Let's fast forward to Section 4, the 1990s breaking point. The economic story here is pretty stark, and it really all boils down to this single number, 80,000. Thanks to trade agreements like NAFTA, the rise of factory automation, and global trade shifts, over 80,000 American manufacturing plants shut down. So, while cities started booming with new, highly educated tech and knowledge economies, these plant closures heavily impacted small, mid-sized towns that had built their entire identity around a single industry. To really ground this data in reality, let's look at Danville, Virginia. In 1993, a textile company called Dan River Mills provided 6,500 jobs. Just 8 years later, in 2001, every single one of those jobs was gone. Poof! Danville didn't magically get a new tech hub. It got vacant brick buildings and a devastating opioid crisis. This fueled a profound narrative in rural communities that the people in power fundamentally just did not care about them.
So, as cities were simultaneously getting richer, more cosmopolitan, and adopting new secular priorities, this economic break morphed into some pretty severe cultural friction. Each side began embracing completely opposing symbols. Rural America gravitated towards symbols of tradition and self-reliance: country music, pickup trucks, the American flag, the cross. Meanwhile, urban centers embraced symbols of rapid social change: pride flags, bike lanes, farmers markets. Neither side fully understood the other, and to each, the other symbols started to feel like an active attack on their own way of life.
And finally, we reach the core. In Section 5, what keeps us apart?
Right now, we are caught in a self-sustaining loop. Step 1, geographic sorting. Educated young professionals leave small towns for cities, turning blue areas bluer, while those who stay and put down roots turn red areas redder. Step 2, uncompetitive primary elections. Largely due to gerrymandering, these primaries heavily reward political extremes rather than moderates. And Step 3, partisan media algorithms. They constantly silo our worldviews, feeding us exactly what we want to hear. So the people who challenge our assumptions are just angry faces on a screen, not actual neighbors we know and talk to.
To prove exactly how extreme these uncompetitive environments have become, consider this staggering statistic. Out of 435 House members in the 2024 elections, only 4 lost their primary elections. Just 4. That is astonishing. It means politicians have virtually zero incentive to appeal to the middle. Their only real threat comes from the most hardcore members of their own party, driving urban representatives further left and rural representatives further right.
Which leaves us with a really profound question. With self-sorting and media silos baked right into our current system, what could possibly emerge to break this loop? How can we ever break a framework that structurally rewards polarization? It's a massive challenge, for sure, but understanding the architecture of the divide is the first critical step.